Welcome inside this midweek edition of Big Ten Today. I'm your host, Rick Pizzo. Got some great stuff coming up for you in today's show. We'll head live to State College and chat with Penn State head man James Franklin a few days ahead of Penn State's annual Blue-White Spring Game. We also get some news on Michigan State as the Spartans get ready for their spring kickoff this weekend, checking in with MSU insider Chris Solari. And Abby Meyers, second leading scorer for the Maryland women's basketball team this past season, was drafted in the first round of Monday's WNBA draft. We'll catch up with Meyers as well. But we do begin with developing news. The Big Ten is set, according to multiple reports, to hire longtime television executive Tony Petitti as its new commissioner, replacing Kevin Warren, who left recently to take over as the president of the Chicago Bears. Petitti's resume is impressive. He created the BCS while at ABC Sports, then, while with CBS, helped that network reacquire NFL games in the late 90s. He then was a key member in the launching of the MLB Network in 2009. A 14-time Emmy Award winner, Tony Petitti is expected to be named the next commissioner of the Big Ten. And we will have much more on this story as developments arise throughout the course of the day and in the coming days as well. Don't forget, coming up this weekend here on Big Ten Network, it is a spring football showcase. Starts at noon Eastern in Columbus as Ohio State takes the field. Then at 2 o'clock, Penn State's spring game comes your way, and Michigan State, part of that Saturday triple header of spring football right here on Big Ten Network. And for more on all things green and white, welcome in Chris Solari, who does a terrific job covering Michigan State football and men's basketball for the Detroit Free Press. Chris, I want to start with the spring game set for this coming weekend. Mel Tucker, since he arrived in East Lansing, has talked about physicality. He wants his guys to hit, to tackle, but so many coaches have shied away from that in spring games. They don't want anybody to get hurt. They basically take physicality off the table. What should we expect Saturday in East Lansing? Well, it's not going to be a traditional spring game. They are going to go more of the open practice, kind of what they did really the first 3 years of Mel Tucker. And a couple years ago in 2021, the first time he had spring ball, there were injuries and shortages of players in the defensive backfield. On last year, it was on the offensive line, and this year it's the defensive line that's a little banged up going in. So they are going to do some 11-on-11 work towards the end of the practice session. But I think it's going to be a chance to just see how the guys look in the drill work that they do. And I think the bigger thing is when you get to the 11-on-11, how are the ones looking against the other ones? Certainly one of the biggest stories on offense is the quarterback competition. Peyton Thorne was the guy a year ago, but he'd be the first to tell you he really struggled. What are you hearing about Peyton's play so far this spring and the two guys that we expect to compete against him for that starting spot? Yeah, I think that Peyton Thorne, he was a product last year of an offensive line that had some struggles early, a run game that didn't produce. He's been throwing the ball well. You can tell his leadership is still exemplary. And I think ultimately, when it comes down to it, you need the quarterback to be the best leader on the team. He's in front of the team. He's throwing the ball pretty well. I think the young guys, with Caden Hauser and really Noah Kim, who isn't a young guy anymore. I mean, he's a redshirt junior and got some chances last year. They're pushing him. And I think that's exactly what Mel Tucker wanted. I don't think there's going to be any clarity coming out of this. And I anticipate them keeping them in a pretty good competition going into preseason camp in August. Chris, we knew the running back situation was going to be a struggle last year. I mean, Kenneth Walker 2 seasons ago just erased so many issues with what he could do in the ball in his midsection. Jalen Berger came in last year and led the team in rushing yards, but I'm not so sure he provided everything that they wanted. You did mention all the injuries and inconsistency on the offensive line. What's the biggest story right now inside that running back room? I think it's going to be interesting to see how Jalen Berger and Nathan Carter blend. They brought in Jaron Mangum, who was at South Florida. So they've got a number of young guys, experienced guys that they've brought in. I mean, they've brought in 6 transfers in Mel Tucker's time at the running back. So that's the one spot where they've hit the portal the hardest. And I think that
Berger at the end of the year really started to come on. You started to see him trust the offensive line a little more, trust his vision with it. But he's got some challengers now. I think that Carter is a guy that people have talked a lot about. He came in from UConn. He's a smaller guy, but he's got a little bit of a burst to him. So it's going to be fascinating to kind of watch them in the scrimmage mode as well, because we mentioned about the offensive line being thin last year. They got about 18 guys healthy right now on the O-line. So that's allowed them to do some different things to get that rhythm built in the run game that I don't think they were able to do last spring, which I think was ultimately a big cost come the season starting.
Jayden Reed was certainly one of the game breakers on this team on the outside last year, but he was also hurt for portions of last year, and that really allowed us to see the growth and development of Keon Coleman. Just such an outstanding athlete. What is the ceiling and what will be expected of him this coming fall?
Well, the ceiling, I mean, particularly if you talk to Keon Coleman, is there is no ceiling. That he's a guy that's got unlimited potential. Not playing basketball this year, I think you've heard a lot of the coaches say it's allowed him to dig into the playbook, work on his route running. And I think just looking at him, it allowed him to keep on weight and get a little more physical and add some bulk and mass that, when you're playing basketball and running all the time, you aren't able to do in the winter. So there are some things that I think with Keon Coleman that are going to be interesting to watch, regardless of who's the quarterback, because he's a game-breaking type of player. I mean, the type of guy that you look at, if he's got the physical skills that after this year he could go pro if he has a solid year, an injury-free year, and continues that ascent that he showed last year.
Chris, you mentioned the transfer portal at the running back position. A year ago, Mel Tucker and that defensive staff did a little bit of that in the front seven. Jacoby Winmon came in, had a great year. Obviously, there was the controversy at the end and didn't get to finish the way that he started. But we look at this year's D-line and it looks completely revamped, which is probably something that they needed. What do you anticipate up front defensively?
Well, I'm curious to see where the DNs are, because that was a big issue last year, particularly after all the suspensions. I mean, it was injuries first with Jeff Petrosky and Chris Bogle, and then the suspensions. They were really deep in digging for players at DN. And I think that in the middle, you're still strong. You've got Simeon Barrow, you've got Maverick Hansen, you've got Derek Harmon, are proven guys. They brought in a couple transfers in Jarrett Jackson from Florida State and Dre Butler from Liberty. Veteran guys who have been around Division I programs and have an understanding of how to make things work. At DN, that's what's going to be, to me, fascinating, because they've got to generate more pressure. I think that's caused some of the issues in coverage, and you bring in a guy like By Job, who's a talented freshman. But then they also last year brought in Ken Talley during camp from Penn State, which is interesting. He's a guy that I'm curious to kind of see on the field and doing those things. And then, they brought in Tunmise Adelea from Texas A&M, a former 5-star guy who can play inside and out. And I think he could end up being the star of that line this year, even with the guys like Barrow and Hansen and Harmon. Who I think they've got the guys in the middle. It's about getting the pressure on the edge, really, for this team to kind of take that next step defensively.
In that back seven, when you combine linebackers and the secondary, obviously Ben Van Sumeren grabbed some attention by putting up crazy numbers during pro day. Xavier Henderson gone after what seemed like a decade in East Lansing. And so this puts more on Cal Haladay, who's probably the heart and soul of that defense right now, but also Darius Snow, who was banged up for so much of last year. And Chris, I know that Mel Tucker has said he's healthy when he's healthy. What does that mean?
Well, that's Mel Tucker saying, I'm not talking about injuries. That's his Belichickian way of balking at giving any kind of hint, even though it's April and there isn't a game for a couple months. I think that the healing process for Darius Snow is going to take a little while still. And that, the big thing is it's spring. So you do want to get him into fall camp and ease that physical, because it was a pretty significant leg injury you saw in that first game. In terms of the other linebackers, I do think, you look at Cal Haladay, Windman, I think, coming back is going to be a very big addition for this defense, even an internal addition, if you will, because he only had 2 games at linebacker last year, and you started to see them do some different things. Then he gets suspended, and Aaron Brule stepped in, and both of those guys came back for an extra year of eligibility. They're veterans. They're quick. They've got some speed now on the edge. So you can ease a guy like Darius Snow back, because essentially what they wanted Darius Snow to be when he moved from safety to linebacker last year. You've got that with Brule and Windman now, in the quickness and the ability to get downhill in the run game and really get around the edge and add some pressure as well. So I think the linebacking core is going to be very, very interesting to watch. And then you look at losing Xavier Henderson is maybe the biggest loss on this defense, just simply because of what he is as a communicator. He was the guy that really kept that defense together when everything broke down last year in terms of personnel, and you saw them the ability to do some different things in terms of coverages and nickel and dime and go into a 4-3. I mean, these are things that Scotty Hazelton didn't get to do his first couple years, and a lot of that was because of a guy like Xavier Henderson. So right now they're working on their communication in the back end with young guys like Jaden Mangum and Dylan Tatum. Those safeties have big shoes to fill for a guy like Henderson.
All right, Spartan football kickoff comes your way on the Big Ten Network this Saturday, 4 o'clock Eastern. Chris, before we let you go, I want to transition to men's basketball, which, of course, you also cover, as I mentioned, for the Detroit Free Press. And huge news over the last couple of days for Tom Izzo. This team was expected to be a borderline top 5 team, regardless of who decided to come back next year. Among those guys who still had eligibility, both Malik Hall and Tyson Walker say they will be back in green and white next season. This automatically makes Michigan State not just a Big Ten, but a national championship contender, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think you do have to say that. I mean, because as we've seen over the last few years, the experience in the NCAA tournament and making that deep run matters. It's the veteran teams that are able to get there and get the hardware. I think that, to me, that's where Tyson Walker comes in, because you do win in March with guard play, and I think you saw what he was able to do along with AJ Hoggard to get MSU into the Sweet 16 this year. Malik Hall, I think, though, is also just as big of a retention. You especially if he's healthy. I know he had surgery on his foot on Wednesday, and he's in the healing process, but that was something that was bothering him, that he played through the pain and managed to gut it out for the rest of the season and really play about 28 minutes a game once he did come back from the second time that his foot was bothering him. But he's a versatile defender, and he's a guy that is a captain, has been a captain in this program and a leader in this program. So you've got a productive guy in Walker, and you've got a wild card physically and production wise in Hall, who provides even more in terms of guiding and leading guys. And when you've got a young class coming in like Michigan State does, that's among the top 5 in the country, they need that blend of veteran leadership to help guide those young guys and put them in the best position to make that run. And I do think that you do look at this group with Xavier Booker coming in, with Jeremy Fears, Derek Norman, and Cohen Carr, the incoming freshman class. You blend them with the veterans. I think you look at these guys and you say this is a Big Ten championship and then national championship contender right out of the gate in November.
And of course, Michigan State has something that very few teams do. A coach like Tom Izzo, as successful as he has been throughout his career in March. Great stuff, as always, by Chris Solari. Chris, we appreciate you joining us for a few minutes on Big Ten Today.
Thanks, Rick.
It is time for today's big stat. What a terrific year Penn State had in 2022, ranked 7th in the final AP poll. Yes, a lot of all Big Ten players from last season have moved on, but James Franklin also welcomes in the second best recruiting class in the Big Ten, according to 24/7 Sports, one of the best in the country overall with 23 commits, 18 of those considered to be 4 stars. And we are thrilled to be joined now by the aforementioned head coach of the Penn State Nittany Lions, James Franklin. James, first and foremost, I know spring ball is getting ready to wrap up. You got the game this weekend, so we appreciate you being with us, spending some time. How's life in State College?
Good. The weather's been beautiful this week. It's like 82 degrees here today, so hopefully we'll have great weather the rest of this week, and specifically on Saturday with the spring game, it'll be great. We always get great support and huge numbers from an attendance standpoint, and obviously great weather helps with that.
No question. It was awesome. A year ago, I got to call the game last year alongside Matt Millen and Matt McGloin, and one of the big stories coming into that game was watching Drew Aller, who, to be honest, looked like a young man who was maybe on that stage for the first time ever, and then we saw massive progression over the last couple of months. What have you seen over the last 12 months in his progression as a college quarterback?
Yeah, he was able to play kind of unusually in really, I think, almost every game last year, starting with Purdue. So there's a ton of value in that. He was able to get game experience. He played in the Rose Bowl. So all those things matter. It was probably the next best thing to him being the starter, gaining that experience, really good foundation that's been laid with him. And right now is a really good competition going with Bo Prabula, is a guy that we're excited about as well. So a lot of good things going in the quarterback room, but we just got to keep building, and hopefully, to your point, the progression that was made from the spring game to the fall last year, hopefully we can take another big jump like that in that quarterback room.
James, that does lead right into my next question about the competition between Drew and Bo. How would you describe how that's taken place throughout spring ball?
They're very different quarterbacks from, maybe somewhat of a body type perspective. If you look at Drew's, 6'5", 242 pounds, and can move in the pocket and can extend some plays, has shown that. But Bo is probably more of a true dual threat quarterback, probably a little bit bigger. Trace McSorley is how I would probably describe him. And really Bo did a great job last year of giving Drew a run for his money, and that's been really good competition again this spring. And then we got a young kid, Jackson Smolik, who also graduated early, that's here getting really valuable reps so he can be prepared for next fall as well.
It's a pretty nice comparison when you're compared to Trace McSorley, a guy who did some pretty special things in the blue and white. The rest of that backfield, you could make an argument, it's not just the best 1-2 punch in the Big Ten, arguably the best in the country with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. I guess the hard question to answer is, how can those guys be even better during their sophomore seasons?
Well, the thing that's great about our conference is, you look at our side of the conference specifically, and there's some really good, backfield tandems as well. Obviously, Michigan's got one as well. I'm biased and partial to my two guys, but I think, they're two really good examples of, I think, what makes our conference, so competitive. And when you got two guys that are both able to be, big-time backs, whether it's from a home run threat perspective that Nick Singleton has, or whether it's just a true production perspective, obviously you're talking about Nick, but when you talk about Katron is as productive as any back in the country. So we feel really good about those two guys, and we think their evolution, in the passing game, I think is going to be important for us as well, which is something we're really going to focus on this off season. But we love those two guys, and they're really good friends and have been complementary pieces.
Nearly 2,000 combined yards, 25 total touchdowns between the two a year ago. Just mind-blowing numbers. James, it's fascinating because I'm curious, in today's world, is it almost considered an internal recruiting win when you have two guys who are that talented, who play the same position, who could be number ones at a lot of different places, that decide they're so happy with their current situations that they're not going to consider anywhere else?
Yeah, I think that's fair, but I would also say, the way people are using, and specifically the way we're using running backs, it's not like it was in the 80s where, you got a starting tailback and he's going to be in there, every single play of the game or the majority of the game. taking that pounding. So to me, it's a real advantage for both of them that they got a chance to be fresh and healthy in the fourth quarter, and they got a chance to be fresh and healthy throughout the season. So I just think it makes a ton of sense, and most people are playing multiple backs in today's college football as well.
I'd like to go to the receiver spot. We'll get to tight ends in a sec because I know you love to talk about your tight end room over the last couple of years for good reason. At the wide receiver spot, in addition to Keandre Lambert-Smith and Harrison Wallace, who else are you expecting to give you kind of a boost on the outside?
Well, they're the two guys. They're the two guys that have really established themselves in games and have established themselves internally in our practices and this spring. That's really probably one of the big question marks that we got to get resolved through the end of spring ball, but really, going into next season when we open against West Virginia, we better feel like, we know exactly who our starting 3 wide receivers are, and really hopefully we're in a position where we have at least 5 guys that we think we can play with and win with in the Big Ten, if not more. But that's one of our question marks that we have to get resolved between now and West Virginia, whether that is continuing to develop the guys that we have on our current roster, which is going to happen, or whether that is also the addition of some guys joining our program in the summer.
Speaking of that tight end room that I've mentioned, it's been such a position of strength for you, James, over the last couple of years. And I've talked to some draft folks over the last couple of weeks, and they absolutely love the potential of Brenton Strange to be a really impactful guy at the next level. He's gone, but there's a bunch that's still back in that room. What do you like about this current makeup?
Yeah, I think Brenton's got a bright future, and we're excited for him and look forward to see how the draft plays out really for all of our guys. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. We've done a great job of recruiting and developing our tight end room. When you think of Theo and Tyler Warren, those two guys, they've played a bunch of football for us. They're both big-bodied athletes that, in my mind, are true tight ends. You see a lot of these tight ends winning awards, and they're really just big wideouts. Our tight ends are doing both. They're able to impact the game in the passing game, but they're also able to impact the game in the running game and being able to block defensive ends and blocking in the box and allowing us to take advantage of the 2 running backs that we have in the backfield and keep defensive coordinators guessing. Are you gonna put these tight ends in a run set category? You're gonna put them in a pass set category. When you're able to do both at a high level, it makes it very, very challenging when you can get into a condensed set and try to muscle people, or you can use the same guys and spread people out. There's a ton of value that comes from that. So we love those guys. The next step is we need Dinkins, our 3rd tight end who's been in the program for a couple of years now. We need him now to come on and take that role, maybe similar to how Tyler Warren was last year. That's going to be important for us to have at least 3 guys that we feel like we can win with in the Big Ten.
James, let's head to the other side of the ball. Defensively, what was the biggest takeaway from year 1 with Manny Diaz as the defensive coordinator?
Well, we made some changes defensively, not dramatic, but we made some changes defensively. We're probably more of a middle of field closed man coverage team now than we've been in the past. And I think as the season went on and our guys really embrace the new style of being disruptive up front with tackles for loss to get people off schedules and sacks, and also being able to pressure the quarterback so that when we're covering, we don't have to cover very long in our man coverage. When our guys really started to embrace that and play fast, that as the season went on, we really started to play really good football. But it took us about to the middle of the season to get to that point. And then by the end of the season, we were able to win on offense, win on defense, win on special teams. And to be one of the elite teams in college football, you really have to do that. You can't be lopsided in one way or the other. And defensively, by the end of the season, we were playing as good as anybody in the country.
And your secondary specifically has really been an area of strength. So many productive players at the cornerback and safety spots over the last couple of years. Yes, that includes Joey and Jair, but guys that are returning also have a ton of experience, and you add a really good transfer in Storm Duck from North Carolina, comes in, he's automatically a member of the All Big Ten name team. What do
No
you
doubt.
feel about your secondary heading into 2023?
Yeah, Terry Smith and Anthony Poindexter have just done a phenomenal job in recruiting and in development. I think we got 4 safeties, that we feel really good about, that I think will play a ton of football for us. We'll rotate those guys, but Keaton Ellis and Jalen Reed are guys that have been in the program. And then you kind of look at the depth that we've been able to develop and recruit behind them. I think those guys, whether it's KJ or Zachy, those guys are going to play a ton of football for us. So feel really good about, really the 2 deep we have at the safety position. And then obviously when you got a guy, that was an All-American last year in Kalen King at the 1 cornerback, and Johnny Dixon, who's played a ton of football, and then a transfer. And then we're not, you mentioned Storm Duck, but Daquan Hardy's played a ton of football for us. Cam Miller played a ton of football for us last year. So we have depth and talent really at both corner and safety. Daquan Hardy has played a ton of football as a nickel for us, which is an extremely important position in our defense. So that's a group that we have a lot of confidence in, and we need to build on. So a lot of confidence and a lot of scheme is going to be based on our ability to cover people on the back end.
James, where does the name Storm Duck rank among some of the best names that you've coached in your career?
Yeah, it's up there. I mean, a lot of times when you hear those things, it's maybe a nickname or something like that. It's not. That's his government name, and he's been awesome. You guys are going to love to get to know him. Not only has he been really consistent on the field with kind of how he practices and how he prepares, but he's got just such a maturity. You guys always talk about when you come to Penn State just how our guys handle themselves and how they represent the program, which is really important to us. And Storm's come in and not only fit our culture. I think he's one of these guys that got a chance to improve our locker room, and he's been a phenomenal addition for us.
As far as young additions, we're hearing a lot about the linebacker Tony Rojas. What should we know about this young man?
Well, Abdul was a guy that kind of burst onto the scene last year, and obviously we got Curtis coming back, who I think is going to have a huge year for us. And then there's kind of a new guy on the block in Tony Rojas, who graduated early. He's on campus. I don't know how he's done this, but he showed up at 195, and I think he's 229 right now already. Was a high school running back as well as a linebacker, very similar to what Micah Parsons was. And has come in and has really impressed guys, impressed the staff, impressed his teammates with his maturity and his work ethic and his athleticism. So, with Kobe King in there at middle linebacker and Tyler Elsdon, we think we got a chance to put a really good linebacking core on the field again and represent LBU. And LeVar Arrington and all the guys that, in our history expect a certain type of linebacker on the field. And from a production standpoint, I think we got a chance to do that again.
Now, James, I'm not very good at math, but I just ran some numbers, and 195 to 229, that tells me that's 34 pounds in a matter of like 3 months and change. Number one, how do you do that? And number two, how good is the weight he put on?
Yeah, it almost sounds kind of unrealistic for me to say it's good weight, but it is. I don't know how he's doing it, but literally I think he's in our nutrition bar all the time. He's getting extra lifts in. I also think he's a guy that I don't know how much lifting he did before arriving at Penn State, so his body's just really growing, and he's a long guy. He's over 6'2", so that helps. So you're going to see him, and he still looks lean and skinny for the most part. I'm trying to figure out the other way. Can he show me how to lose 31 pounds or 29 pounds or whatever it is? Because I could afford to do that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, guys of our age, there's no good about 34 pounds or 30 pounds the other way. Trust me, we don't want to go there. That's very bad news at home for all of us.
Very bad. 6 pounds is bad news at my stage.
Any pounds, my friend. All right, James, let's finish here. What should we expect to see from the spring game this weekend, whether it's format, physicality, or most importantly, what you and the coaching staff really want to get out of it?
Yeah, we're going to try to get back to playing more of a traditional game like we have done in the past. So we actually went over that this morning. We don't specifically have a draft except for me sitting in my office kind of matching it up, and then I present it to the staff and then kind of get some feedback and tweak a few things. But we're going to try to have a traditional game. When you have 75,000 fans show up to a spring game like we do normally, which is more than most people get for regular season games, we want to be able to put on a show and let them kind of get a real feel for what to expect in the fall. It also allows, there to be more of a true competition. I break the staff up as well with play callers and the whole deal. So from a professional development standpoint for our staff, I think it's really important. And for us to get a feel for how our guys are going to compete on TV, on the Big Ten Network, and then also in front of a fan base on a beautiful afternoon. So we're going to try to get after it. We haven't been able to do that the last couple of years, but this is how we've really done it for 7 years at Penn State. So we're going to try to get back to a traditional format.
Sounds great. Spring game comes your way, 2 o'clock. As Coach Franklin mentioned, you can see it right here on Big Ten Network. Hope that good weather holds. No storms, only storm duck. It's the only storm that's allowed inside the stadium on Saturday afternoon. Hey, James, it's always great to catch up. We appreciate the time. Know you took a long time to fill us in on what your squad looks like right now, so we really appreciate it. And
I appreciate you wearing your Penn State navy blue today, so thank you very much.
Of course, did it on purpose, no question. It's already been a great 2023 for Abby Meyers, second leading scorer on the Maryland women's basketball team this year. Terps exceeded a lot of expectations, certainly throughout the postseason. And then on Monday night, Meyers was drafted late in the first round, the number 11 overall pick by the Dallas Wings. And we are thrilled to be joined by Abby Meyers on this edition of Big Ten Today. And it looks like there is no rest, even for those who get picked in the first round of the WNBA draft. Abby, it looks like you're working out as we speak.
Yeah, no, you're right. Just finished a great lift and going to get some conditioning after. But, it was a great moment. You have to enjoy it with the family and friends you have. But the next day, woke up early, got in the gym, and now I'm just getting back to work and preparing for training camp.
Take me back to Monday night, and what was the feeling like as you're waiting and then you realize that the name coming out of the lips of the person announcing the next pick in the WNBA draft is, in fact, Abby Meyers?
Yeah, it was a great moment. I was with, my parents, some friends, my high school coach and his wife, and we were just sitting on the couch, getting all comfortable. It was going to be the 11th pick, and we figured maybe wait 5 or 6 more picks and then maybe start getting nervous and get the phones ready. But when I heard the name get called, it was surreal. I screamed, I cried, I did a little bit of everything, went through all the emotions, and it was just good to be surrounded by family and friends in that moment, and just grateful for the opportunity that Dallas is giving me.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear because I was checking a bunch of mocks before Monday night's draft, and most had you somewhere in the 14 to 16 range. So even for you, it was a little bit of a surprise to go at 11?
Oh, yeah. Big surprise. I don't think there was one person that wasn't really surprised deep down. Maybe they're lying about it if they said they weren't. But yeah, I think that's what's so great about the draft is that you never know what's going to happen at the end of the day. You just take what you get, right, and you roll with it. So that's what I'm going to do.
So from Monday night until now, has there been conversation with Dallas? What's life been like for you now that you're kind of officially a pro since Monday night?
Yeah, I never thought I'd hear those words that I'd be a pro. But yeah, just talking with their president, Greg, and their coach and assistant GMs and kind of just getting organized. I know they have a lot of logistics to cover on their end. So I'm just waiting for the A-OK, and then I'll head down to Dallas.
So what's next on your itinerary? How does life shape up for you over the next week or so?
Yeah, despite being a professional athlete now, I'm still a student. So I have to check in with all my professors, get that covered, and let them know where I'm going to be the next couple of weeks. And then when I get the classroom figured out, the training's consistent and got a good routine, I'll pack my bags for a good 3 weeks, and hopefully I'll be ready and I'll show them what I can do.
How much have you had the chance to share the enjoyment of Monday night and talk about your respective futures with your now former Maryland teammate Diamond Miller, who was taken number 2 overall by Minnesota on Monday?
Yeah, it's just been a whirlwind the past couple of days, right? Like I know she was in New York City with a bunch of her just family and friends, and the coaches were there as well. So it's my understanding that she's also headed for Kelsey Plum training camp. So she has a lot on her plate. So I'm letting her do her. We wish each other good luck before the draft. We're both, each other's biggest fans, and just wish her all the best. But I'm looking forward to her season, and hopefully, we'll stay in touch, and I'll check in with her. But she's busy right now, just as I am. It's a fun time.
And we have a tag board post here. As I understand it, one of your former Princeton teammates was able to kind of surprise you at home after your selection.
Oh my God, it was such a special moment. Yeah. So, Bella Allery, big name. She went 5th in the 2020 draft. Obviously with COVID, she didn't have a training camp, but she went to Dallas and she played for them for 2 years, and she has a lot of gear. Actually grew up in the same area as me. And so she's back home, and she drove over when she heard and brought me some amazing Dallas Wings gear. So when the president and GM, when they FaceTimed me, I was already geared up. I had the swag. So it was a great experience, great moment with her.
Wow, that is such a crazy connection, growing up near each other, Ivy League players of the year, and now potential similarities at the pro level as well.
Yeah.
Abby, how do you think this past year at Maryland got you more WNBA ready?
Yeah, I always say that choosing Maryland as my last year of college basketball was the best decision I could have made, and just grateful for the opportunity that Coach Freeze and the entire coaching staff at Maryland gave me to come here. It gave me the exposure, the spotlight, and just allowed me to play against bigger, stronger, more talented people, and just prove to myself and everyone else that I can compete at this level. I can change, I can be versatile, and I can compete.
You leave college with women's basketball in a very good place. I'm curious as to how you kind of saw the sport grow, whether it was in terms of popularity or the fact that more people were this year interested in the women's Final Four than they were in the men's Final Four. The television ratings were there. The ticket prices were actually higher for the women's Final Four. Where is the sport of women's college basketball right now?
I mean, it's just beautiful to watch, kind of just the growth of it from when I was young, watching the game at the collegiate and professional levels till now. And the talent, as I said, it's getting better. Everyone's just starting at a younger age with social media. I think that's just been phenomenal, giving players, female athletes, just the leverage and the platform that they need. And you're seeing it with Angel and everyone with NIL deals. So the game's changing. It's getting better. And it's just a fun thing that people get to enjoy. And I'm so happy that I was able to be a part of its growth the past 4 or 5 years in college basketball. And I think college basketball is more exciting than any other level right now, and you're seeing it, and it's only going to get better with more talent and generational talent coming in.
All right, Abby, let's finish here. It was a life-changing moment for you on Monday night. Will you allow yourself to spoil yourself? Will there be any gifts from Abby Meyers to herself after becoming a WNBA pro?
I think if anything, I've been enjoying the past couple of weeks, been resting my body, recovering it. And, now it's back to work. And if anything, I can spoil myself by just taking care of my body, getting the rest it needs, and just suiting up for the training camp. But in terms of any fun gifts, I got this really nice necklace. Let's see. It's like a little A on it, one with a teammate. So, maybe that's my gift to me. That's it.
Fair enough. Hey, a healthy body, especially with the WNBA season coming not far away, is a very important gift as well. Abby Meyers, congratulations on all your success. Great to catch up with you. We look forward to following your career with the Wings in the WNBA.
Appreciate it. Thank you.